Trustee Blair,
Present.
trustee Annalise,
Present.
quorum established.
There, yeah.
Huh? Oh, you're gonna vote this.
Well, the mayor's here, yes. Yeah. Let's see. Thank you. So we do have a quorum. The mayor is in attendance as well. Thank you everyone for being here this evening, and we will take a moment of silence, and then we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance, and we're also going to be dedicating our meeting this evening to a long-standing Woodridge resident. So just a moment of silence, please. Before conducting the Pledge of Allegiance, I would like to, on behalf of the Village Board, dedicate and honor in memory of a long-time, 50-plus year Woodridge resident that passed this year. Her name is Diana Fichter. To the Fichter family and their friends and their neighbors, our deepest condolences go out. Our hearts are filled with sadness, and a wonderful Woodridge resident for all those years. So please join us in just dedicating this meeting to her honor and her family's honor as well. So thank you. We'll go ahead and do the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'd like to offer, if everyone here this evening would like to lead us in the pledge, I'd appreciate that.
I pledge allegiance of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, justice for all.
So we always start our meetings with special awards and recognitions, and we do have a wonderful recognition this evening. And I'm going to ask if our, there she is, our Director of Community Development would please invite up our, I'm going to use the word illustrious, Karen Byrne, and our code enforcement agents. Thank you. And Eric Alwyn, are you coming up too? And Cheryl, wow, we have
Sure, come on.
wonderful group. And Cheryl.
So I'm very happy to, tonight, Karen Burns, code enforcement has been an integral part of our community development department. And, you know, the role of code enforcement is very integral as part of our daily operations. It's essential in upholding the quality of our life, of our residences and our businesses, and what they expect in our communities. So code enforcement takes on many roles. Educator, I've learned a lot from these two ladies. Researcher, problem solver, mediator, friend, companion. I mean, she's out there in the community and seeing things and trying to help people. And that's what I've seen in my 2 years here. And I know Eric has seen it throughout her time here. Code enforcement is an obvious role is controlling blight in our communities, but it provides the first line of action in making sure that our issues are managed in an effective way. And in my time with Karen Burns Company, she has represented the community in the most professional and efficient way. She was hired here in 2007 to actually assist with some problem areas that we had in our community. But then it was in 2010 when we restructured our community development department that she was brought on full time and took on all the code enforcement efforts. Karen did such a great job that in code enforcement in 2015, when we were having some issues with our third-party contractor, she was able to then take on our multi-family rental inspection. And I think that was a big game changer for our community. I love listening to her in our weekly meetings and the relationship she's built with the maintenance guys, the property managers. She knows these people well. She's built a great rapport with them. I know she can just pick up the phone and call someone and she gets a response. And that's important. You know, code enforcement isn't easy, but she makes it look easy. So thank you for that. Thank you for taking on that program. Thank you for being a leader in that, along with Lourdes Garcia. You guys have performed over 1,000 inspections and re-inspections every year on our multifamily rental properties within the village. And then in 2020, upon retirement from the village, Woodridge, Cheryl Gowell a 20-plus year employee, joined the forces of Karen to support the administrative side of the Karen Burns Company. And again, Cheryl, her experience, her knowledge, her tact, she's very pleasant to deal with. She's very responsive. Her efforts have helped us in many ways. And I want to thank you for your dedication. And I hear your passion and you care about our community. Both of you do very much. And Karen has performed over 12,000 multifamily inspections, but Cheryl also has quite a bit of numbers under her as well. She has entered up to 3,000 code enforcement cases. She's updated over 10,000 actions on those cases. And if you combine these numbers with the work she did when she was with the village, she's entered a total of 25,000 cases and updated 56,000 actions during her tenure with the village. Cheryl and Karen have overseen the annual neighborhood inspection program as well in our community. And as you recall, we did increase that last year. So we even did more windshield surveys. And that's the time that we go out and we perform additional inspections, which generated and sent out over 4,500 windshield survey letters. So these two ladies definitely are busy, and we're busy representing our community and with the utmost professionalism and tact. And I know code enforcement is not an easy job, and it's been an ultimate pleasure working with them. They will be very much missed. I don't think we'll ever get as good of a code enforcement group as we ever can, but thank you very much for your time. And thank you, Ray, for letting Karen work with us, as I know the hours she's puts in and the time, but it's been an absolute pleasure. And this village is very lucky to have had their services, and we wish them all the best in their next chapter. So thank you very much on behalf of
Thank you.
Woodridge.
Thank and don't go anywhere. So we have to say on behalf of our entire village, thank you. As Director Clark stated several times, what a job. Huge, touching every part of Woodridge, business, residential, really taking extra care in all that you do, all the people that you connect with, and truly make a difference to them as well, but also to our village. So it is one of those, we're happy for you. We can't thank you enough. There's just not enough words. But truly, the outstanding work that you've done on behalf of our community, we owe you a debt of gratitude. It will never be the same. But we thank you so much. And I do want to come and say goodbye to both of you, but I've known you a long time, so. So we'll go ahead and move from the recognition item, which thank you for recognizing two outstanding colleagues at our village who have served our village so well. And it sometimes hits you hard right when you're here tonight. So we'll move to comments from the public. We now will pause to acknowledge any written public comments that have been received prior to the meeting that do not relate to tonight's agenda. And if we have any of those, we would enter those into the public record. So I'm going to ask our administrator if we've received any.
Thank you, Mayor Cunningham. We did receive one written comment from Mr. Gil Barker, and this is regarding the village's water rates and our public information regarding the water utility rates. And board members have received prior copies in advance, and it will be entered into the record.
Thank you very much. Any members of our public here this evening that would like to address the village board on any items that are not related to tonight's agenda? If so, we would invite you up to the podium, please.
Mayor, we have one, Mr. Frank Kosman.
Mr. Costa, I'm going to ask you to identify yourself by name and address on the record, and then you will have 3 minutes to make your statement. And then I'll let you know when you're getting close to your 3-minute time.
Thank you.
And we welcome
Thank you. Good
first of
evening.
all. Thank you for being here, sir.
Thank you. So my concern is about
You
the,
got to identify yourself.
oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
My name is Frank Kosman. I live in Woodridge, 6431 Halsey Drive.
Okay.
All right. My concern is for the Oxford House on Halsey Drive. I still have concerns about the Oxford House at 6428 Halsey Drive. I'm curious if there was any updates from our last meeting on July 18th, 2024. Topics were unlicensed community residents of home exceeding 5 unrelated people and community residents that do not meet separation distance. 2, there are still some overnight parking issues that occur on that block with that Oxford House and those people that live there. They use my driveway to pull in and out of their cars, trucks, whatever that they have. In the wintertime, they leave ice, snow tracks, things like that I have to take care of. They play loud music in their cars at all hours of the day and night, middle of the night. They slam vehicle doors, trunks, all hours of the day and night. They sit in their cars, they smoke or do whatever they do in those cars. The people pick them up, waiting for them in the cars, play loud music all hours of the night. It's very frustrating. Cigarette butts in the street, on my lawn, on my side, all over. I have to clean those up. With the new people coming into that house, they're not aware of the surroundings. They're not used to the village ordinances. They're not from this area. They're not used to the residential living style. There's no courtesy for the neighbors. It's not a nice place to live in this situation. Seems like every month there's an incident, especially this past week, Monday morning at 2:45 a.m. We woke up from a deep sleep. We were started. There was flashing lights all over. The police, the fire, the ambulance were there. Some person came out of the house, looked drunk, high, whatever. It seems like the situation is getting very old over there. The wife and I don't sleep. We wake up all hours of the night from loud noises. It's very disappointing. It's very frustrating. We've been there 30 plus years and never had these kind of happenings here. It really sucks. Does the village have an advocate who communicate with the owner of the foundation? Seems like a lack of transparency on their part. There's no action, no resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Administrator Stonich, I believe someone from staff can reach out to the speaker and provide an update as to the variety of things that are going on with respect to this matter.
Correct. Mr. Kosman, we'll have Director Clark give you her business card before you leave this evening. Thank you.
Is that the only one we have this evening? Thank you so much, sir. Sorry. To make sure. Thank you. So now we'll move and pause to any written public comments that have been received prior to our meeting that do appear on tonight's agenda. And if so, we would enter those into the public record. Anything, Administrator Stonich?
No, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Now going to ask if anyone here this evening would like to make a comment on items that do appear on tonight's agenda. And if so, we would invite you to our podium. Seeing no one, will go ahead and move on to our omnibus agenda. So we will now move to the items which we have. I'm going to ask for a motion, please, to approve items A through C and acceptance of D and E. May I please have a motion? So moved. Thank you, Trustee Blair. A second?
Second.
Thank you, Trustee Antilles. Is there a request for any item to be considered separately this evening?
Madam Mayor, Resolution 2025-2, Item B.
Item B, thank you. Thank you, Trustee Page. Anyone else? All right, thank you. So I'm going to now ask our administrator, if you would please read the items for all of us on the omnibus agenda this evening, as amended, with item B being reserved.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the board, good evening. Item A, Resolution 2025-1, resolution authorizing the execution of certain reinstatement and First Amendment to radio and license agreement between the Village of Woodridge and Ducom. Item C, Ordinance 2025-1, an ordinance authorizing the disposal of personal property owned by the Village of Woodridge. And then item D are prior meeting minutes. And then item E are accounts payable registers from August, October, November, and December, and January. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask our clerk to please call the roll for items A, C, D, and E, please.
Trustee Page,
Aye.
Trustee Blair,
Aye.
Trustee Annalise,
Aye.
Trustee Krusek. Aye. Motion passes.
Thank you.
And then we move to item B, which is Resolution 2025-2, a resolution authorizing the execution of certain ground and
Administrator Stonich, I'm going to recuse myself from item B.
Thank you, Trustee Page. So this item is Resolution 2025-2. Going to ask for a motion to approve that item, please.
So moved.
Thank you very much, Trustee Krusek. A second, please. Second. Thank you, Trustee Blair. Any further discussion on this item? If our clerk would please call the roll.
Trustee Annalise,
Aye.
Trustee Krusek. Aye. Trustee Blair,
Aye.
Mayor Cunningham.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much. Going to go ahead and skip the mayor's report this evening and ask our administrator, please, to turn to your report, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Item A, Ordinance 2025-2, is an ordinance granting a major PUD amendment to the Midpoint Corporate Center PUD preliminary and final PUD plans. This is Demeter Millwork at 7145 Janes Avenue. Director Clark, I believe, is here to provide an overview, and we welcome our guests who I believe are representing Demeter Millwork as well.
Okay, good evening. So we're in the general area we've been talking the last hour. So this here map is the last lot in the midpoint plan unit development, as you can see in the black dashed line. It's on the south side of 71st Street and just north of our new Public Works and Police Department building. It was the last phase of this development. And over the last year, we've been working with the Demeter company who has looked to acquire this property to develop their own facility to relocate their millworking company to the Village of Woodridge. It is zoned ORI. It is a permitted use in the zoning district. Just some history. Again, we brought this forth as a concept plan. It's an infill lot, and we knew that with the proximity to residences, we wanted them to be fully aware of what was going on and bring out any issues. At the time, back in March, general comments and discussions were had about noise, hours, odors, and blending the design of the building with the adjacent buildings in the business park, all of which the developer has taken in consideration with the final plans that was being presented. So in December is where we had the public hearing for the preliminary and final plan approval. Some facts that were presented at that hearing is that we will be limiting truck traffic to 71st Street, and that there will be signage within that parking lot to not allow those trucks to cut through to the back of the buildings. The dust collector system does meet allowable sound decibels per Illinois EPA, as that was a concern raised. In general, their operations are expected to operate from 6 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. There may be times that they mentioned if they have to bring on another shift if there's a heavy workload, but that's what they're anticipating. Currently, they have 30 employees, but with the new location, they plan to double the number of employees at this location. The plan does provide for land bank parking. As you'll see later in the evening, we have a land bank parking agreement. And that's just such that as of right now, per our code, they're required to provide a certain amount of parking, which they, based on their information, do not believe they need. And we'd rather keep the green space and that buffer. So only in the event that we see an issue, or if the developer comes, the owner comes to us and says, I need to change the parking, they're able to add that parking as needed. But the preference was to keep the green space if it's not needed at this time. All in all, there are no other real requests for relief with the plan. Here's what the site plan looks like. You will see that there's the 79 parking spaces in total. They'll have 26 of those land banked along 71st Street. The building itself is around 48,306 square feet, and it does have a setback of 155 feet from 71st Street, and they did purposely want to set that building back farther, just so that they can give themselves a little more distance from the homes that are generally located to the north of them, and they can provide landscaping to help further soften that view. They will have 3 loading dock doors in the rear and 1 drive-in door, and that's also where the area of the dust collection and refuse will be, in the back of the property. Here's their design for their building. As you can see, they're allowing a lot of opportunities for light and with the glass, and they're using some metal and just really kind of modern, neat building. The feedback initially, which they took into consideration, was we understand it's hard to match what's there, but to take in consideration the color palette. So that's where you see these greens and the browns to kind of blend more in that natural tone. I know it's hard to, make something match the area that was built some time ago, but I think they took a lot of notes, and I think they did a good job in trying to make this blend in, but also meet the needs for their facility. Here's a couple other reviews to give you perspective. Again, you can see how the building on the bottom left, how it's going to be set back a little bit so that that structure won't feel as dominant along 71st Street as it is a 40-foot tall facility. Here would be the side facing the west, and where the trucks would come along to the back of the building where the dock area is. In general, the Plan Commission and staff have made a recommendation to move forward with the preliminary and final plans as presented. We do have the owner here as well and their team if you'd like them to further discuss their project or their company as a whole. But the first object today is approving the preliminary plan, and then the following documents are our documents that we require of all developments, such as the improvement agreement. We have a traffic agreement, and then we have the land banking parking agreement. And I can answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Director Clark. I'm going to go ahead and open up to my fellow board members and ask if anyone has any questions at this time. Any questions of the developer who is here also? Anyone? Okay, all right, thank you. So we have before us, I'm going to ask for a motion to approve ordinance 2025-2, please. A motion? So moved. Thank you, Trustee Anteles. A second?
Second.
Thank you, Trustee Page. Any discussion on this item? Seeing none, if our clerk would please call the roll.
Trustee Blair,
Aye.
Trustee Annalise,
Aye.
Trustee Krusek. Aye. Trustee Page.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Next, item B is a related item, Resolution 2025-3, resolution authorizing the mayor and the village clerk to execute a certain water main maintenance agreement between the Village of Woodridge and Demeter DM Woodridge LLC for 7145 Janes Avenue, Demeter Millwork.
Thank you very much. Going to please ask for a motion to approve Resolution 2025-3.
So
Motion?
moved.
I'm sorry.
So moved.
Thank you, trustee Krusek. A second, please.
Second.
Thank you, trustee Blair. Any discussion on this item? If our clerk would please call the roll.
Trustee Blair,
Aye.
trustee Annalise,
Aye.
trustee Krusek. Aye. Trustee Page.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Next, item C, Resolution 2025-4, a resolution authorizing the mayor and village clerk to execute a certain traffic regulation agreement between the Village of Woodridge and DM Woodridge LLC for 7145 Janes Avenue, Demeter Millwork.
Thank you very much. Going to ask for a motion to approve Resolution 2025-4, please.
So moved.
Thank you, trustee Page, and a second.
Second.
Thank you, trustee Antilles. Any discussion on this item? If our clerk would please call the roll.
Trustee Annalise,
Aye.
trustee Krusek. Aye. Trustee Page.
Aye.
Trustee Blair,
Aye.
motion passes.
Next, item D, Resolution 2025-5, a resolution authorizing the mayor and clerk to execute a certain improvement agreement between the Village of Woodridge and DM Woodridge LLC for 7145 Janes Avenue, Demeter Millwork.
If I could please have a motion to approve Resolution 2025-5, please.
So moved.
Thank you, trustee Krusek, and a second.
Second.
Thank you, trustee Blair. Any discussion on this item? Seeing none, if our clerk would please call the roll.
Trustee Annalise,
Aye.
trustee Krusek. Aye. Trustee Page.
Aye.
Trustee Blair,
Aye.
motion passes.
Next, item E, Resolution 2025-6, a resolution authorizing the mayor and clerk to execute a certain land banked parking agreement between the Village of Woodridge and DM Woodridge LLC for 7145 Janes Avenue and Demeter Millwork.
If I could please have a motion to approve Resolution 2025-6, please.
So moved.
Thank you, trustee Antilles. A second.
Second.
Thank you, trustee Page. Any discussion on this item? If our clerk would please call the roll.
Trustee Krusek. Aye. Trustee Page.
Aye.
Trustee Blair,
Aye.
trustee Annalise.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Next, item F, ordinance 2025-3, an ordinance amending the village code of the Village of Woodridge on the description of allowed uses. This is Title 9, Chapter 5, Section 12. These would authorize text amendments to the zoning code, which regulates uses within the village to describe and relocate the use chart.
If I could please have a motion to approve ordinance 2025-3, please.
So moved.
Thank you, trustee Blair. A second.
Second.
Thank you, trustee Antilles. Any discussion on this item? If our clerk would please call the roll.
Trustee Page,
Aye.
trustee Blair,
Aye.
trustee Annalise.
Aye.
Trustee Krusek. Aye. Motion passes.
Next, item G, Resolution 2025-7, resolution to adopt an update to the village's fund balance policy for the Village of Woodridge, and Finance Director John Harrington is here to introduce the item.
Good evening, Director Harrington.
Good evening. The village staff occasionally looks through their financial policies, and we kind of give them a refresh and make sure nothing significant has changed. So tonight for your review is our fund balance policy. What is a fund balance? It's basically our rainy day fund for, emergencies or things that happen that are unexpected. So, it is our net position for the most part for the governmental funds. So we're going to focus on the operating accounts tonight, but we will touch on all funds outstanding. General fund, you'll see if you look at the financial statements, the fund balance is broken out into a number of different categories. So you have the non-spendable, restricted, committed, assigned, and unassigned. The fund balance policy really focuses on that unassigned or available funds. And on the water and sewer side, it's basically they just use the term net position. So looking at the general fund, the last time the policy was updated was in 2019 and was presented to the board. It had a range for the fund between 25 and 50%. It talked about if it goes below or in that range, it'd be replenished in 3 years. And then balances over that percentage could be used by board direction for special items, or typically capital is what was focused on. For the updated policy, we removed the range and just kept it at 50%. Again, it's a conservative range, and we basically, when we had 25 to 50, we would have used 50 as that threshold anyways, had the balance fallen beneath it. Using it or any excess of 50%, again, it's a board directive, and we pretty much, again, focused on capital items or non-reoccurring events that the board would deem necessary to use those funds. And then we kept if it falls below 50%, it would be replenished within 3 years. So it's very similar to what was in the fund for 2019. We just kind of cleaned up the language a little bit. In looking at the water sewer fund, again, it was last adapted in 2019. And again, it had a 3-month or 25% fund balance percentage. And then if it fell below, it was 5 years. And the longer term was basically the general fund has a lot more tools to replenish a fund balance. Water sewer is really just based on fees charged. So I think the thought process was you may need additional years if you fall underneath that percentage. Now, when we split the funds in prior years, we did talk about fund balance, and that was part of the 24 budget conversation. So we used to lump both operating and capital together, and we did that split. And as part of that conversation, we did kind of touch base on the fund balance policy. And at that point, we kind of bounced around 35% or maybe bumping that up a little bit. And then in discussing it with the board, when we were talking ranges, they were in general comfortable with that 35%. But the updated policy, we use 33 because it's a cleaner number. It's 4 months worth. And kind of like when you think about the general fund, we say 50%, but our balance we currently hold is higher. It's the same theory with water sewer. So we are saying that 33% is kind of our baseline. And if it's a little bit higher, that is fine. If you recall, when we looked at the budget, we used actually 35% as the fund balance percentage for items to be transferred to capital. And that was, the board was comfortable when we did the 24 budget that 35% was a reasonable number. Again, it's a board directive. So as we go forward, as the years go on, I think we saw through the budget process, those transfers were going to happen in the next couple years, but would kind of balance out based on kind of how the fund works. So truly, we probably won't have as large of transfers from operating to capital. And that's where that 35% will really kind of be the number that we need to, work with moving forward to make sure we stay within that threshold. And then we kept the 5-year replenishment. Any question on the operating side before I kind of do a quick summary on the other funds? Okay. And this is just a recap that shows that we kind of use 35% at the bottom of this schedule for the transfers for the operating fund. So you can see in 25, we project to move about 700,000, and then it goes down each year through 29. The other funds we have, special revenue funds, we just use a balance of 25%, but we do have other policies that we follow throughout the course of the year. For example, MFT, we keep a certain balance in reserve each year that's higher than the 25%, but using that 25% gives us some flexibility. If we decide to do a larger project, we just know we can't hit that bottom threshold. Debt service doesn't really have a percentage, mainly because we transfer money in to be used for debt service each year. So it's kind of an in and out situation. And then capital funds, again, we don't use a specific percent. We really look at the next year's capital jobs to make sure that we can fund those jobs in the future. Then we have our VERP accounts, or the vehicle and equipment replacement funds. And those, it's not a percentage, but it's based on the capital asset listing and kind of how many years it will take to replenish. And we pretty much fund that based on the life of all the assets in that fund. So when it comes time to replace, we would have accumulated funds necessary to do those replacements. So it doesn't really lend itself to putting a specific percentage in. So that is a very quick recap of the fund balance. Any questions?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, please, Trustee Krusek.
I have a couple of questions, but as I was reading your PowerPoint earlier today, the one that struck me that I wasn't even thinking about, what is a non-spendable amount of money? If you can't spend it, How did it get there and what's going to happen to
Your
it?
best example is like inventory. Things that we possess that we can't spend, fixed assets inventory, things like that. So it goes on our balance sheet, but it's not a commodity that we can do anything with.
Okay, we can't even sell it?
We can sell it, but then it becomes a financial transaction at that point.
Okay. In reading this, when I got it earlier in the week in the packet, one of the things that you said was that you were going based on, I think it was the Government Accounting Standards Board recommendations. What is the negative to falling below the fund balance requirement that we set? Because we can set it, but you can also go below it.
If we go below, one of the things I think that helps us having a very healthy fund balance is rating agencies like to see a very secure general fund balance. So we're saying 50%, which is probably a little higher than GASB recommends, but we're pretty much saying that we understand how important that rainy day fund is. So when those things happen, it's okay. If it falls below, I mean, it's one of those things that the board's going to be made aware that, hey, here's our threshold, we fell below. And I think it becomes more a discussion of why we fell below the 50% and then what our plans are to get us back on track.
Okay, because it's kind of like I don't see, unless the rating agencies really take that into account, that there's any penalty, so to speak. But
No.
when we say that, okay, so our policy is that we want to have it back up within 3 years, my worry is that, and I don't know that there's anything we can do about it. My worry is that some future board down the road could say, oh, well, we have 3 years to do it in, so we'll wait until the 3rd year. Is that also going to cause an effect?
You know, it's hard to say because it's one element of a rating agency review of your financials. So I think it also goes back to the story of why it's happened and what the situation is. So no, as long as we're above, we can always argue, hey, GASB has this level and we're not there. It's just talking about these funds are used for emergencies. So if something does happen, is it better to use your reserve than to cut services or things like that? That's what the rainy day fund's for those emergencies that pop up, or those one-time things that's truly a benefit to the village to maybe use cash on hand versus taking out debt or doing something else.
Okay. And my final question is, we talked about this in the past a little bit, where you could have, and I think this was when Nadine was here, where you could have what's perceived as too much money in the general fund. So should we have a policy that says if we're over a certain percentage, we can designate it to whether it be the capital fund or something else, because we can always pull it back?
I think with this policy does the same thing. So what the policy pretty much says is 50% is our limit, and the board reviews everything above 50%. So as we go every year, and let's say we see our fund balance going to 100%, that's a number where people are going to go, do you really need a year's worth of expenses sitting in your bank account? And I think at that point, staff, and as part of a budget process, we would say, hey, listen, we've got this fund percentage growing. Is there something we need to do with this money? Is it a transfer to capital? Is there something else? Or looking at our revenue sources and decide, does there need to be adjustment of some sort?
Okay. Because I don't know, I would just think that, and again, looking out at the future, this board isn't going to be here forever.
Mhm.
You're not going to be here forever.
That's true.
So should we have something in the policy that just says there's a number at which we should look at it when it's over? Whether it be 100%, 100, because there were times here years ago where we were at 130% of our balance. So I'm just wondering if that would be appropriate.
We could certainly add a phrase if that's the board directive, saying if the balance hits 100%, we will do something.
Just to make it a discussion again.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's certainly, and this is certainly something that can be tabled. We can add additional statement to it and bring it back. That's why we're bringing these policies back. We're going to give everyone a chance to look at what we've had in the past and what we're moving forward with.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Any other comments? Anyone else? Trustee Page?
Thank you. The special revenue fund.
Yes.
So when I think of this fund, I think prior to building the police station, we put aside 0.25% of the sales tax to be restricted funds to be used for that building.
Correct.
Would that be an example of the special revenue fund?
Actually, it isn't. So that's a designated revenue source for a project.
Okay,
Special revenue fund is like MFT.
okay.
So the state gives us that money and we use it for whatever IDOT allows us to use it for. Or it's like the drug money we get, it can only be used for certain things.
And just to clarify, that's money that you get from drug enforcement arrests.
Okay.
Want to make sure the record's clear on that.
That's a very good point. Thank you.
But that being said, that's not, you can't always assume there's going to be a lot of drug crime. So how do we have a minimum balance requirement for something that's outside of our control?
So a lot of that's based on the next year's expenditures. So if we have a bunch of money come in, we kind of judge it that way. Now, if it's a certain, let's say a certain grant that we spend 100%, we're going to spend 100% of that grant. But we often collect some of these through, let's say, the drug funds. It's money that comes in. So it's typically not a one-on-one match. So it's a money sitting there, kind of like MFT. We get our money each month, and then we take a look at the jobs we want to do the next year. So that's where that 25% really kicks in, and we look at it that way.
What's our current fund percentage of this account?
I think it did not change. I think it was 25% in the past, but I can confirm that.
I would like to just state, I appreciate it in all these years, always getting together and talking about this every single year. So if there are, reasons to change something, certainly, and we can always change them again in the future after, I think we do an excellent job here at reviewing everything and giving every option. I wish we had all the slides with all the numbers going out all the years. I just wanted to state that I really appreciate all the information,
Sure.
the ability that we have to talk and make decisions based upon, what we're looking at. We've had some very large projects here in the last few years, and we'll be having another one with our Public Works investment for our community. So I'm, always really wanting to hear what the trustees are thinking, as well as, our finance department and our other department leads from the village. It's very important, and I appreciate all the good work that goes into it, and I know that it makes a difference. So thank you very much for all of that. So there's nothing else on this item.
Mayor, if I understand it correctly, what staff would recommend is to continue the item to the next meeting, and that way staff can come back with some amendments that would reflect, I think, Trustee Krusik's comments, and also to answer Trustee Page's questions as well on the special revenue fund.
So item G, we are going to go ahead.
So you're going to entertain a motion to enter and continue the matter to the next meeting.
So yes, we would like to have a motion, please, and I'd entertain that to take item G, resolution 2025-7, and move it to our next village board meeting.
So moved.
Thank you, Trustee Krusek. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Trustee Antilles. Can we just do on
February 6th is,
February 6th?
yes.
If our clerk would please call the roll.
The motion passes.
Trustee Blair?
Aye.
Trustee Annaly?
Aye.
Trustee Krusek?
Aye.
Trustee Page?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much, everyone. With no further business to discuss, I would like to, I did not share my mayor's report this evening because we had a large agenda this evening. And I would ask that you please stay connected to the Village of Woodridge. We have many, many ways to connect to us through e-news, Facebook, everything. Jamie and her team do an excellent job in outreach. There's so much going on in the village. We hope that you do stay connected and stay in touch with us. We appreciate it very much. So at this time, I would ask for a motion to adjourn the regular meeting of the village board, but please note that immediately following our adjournment, we will reconvene our study session to review and discuss the proposed new public works facility concept design and final space needs report, as well as financing options. And then also please note further that following the study session tonight, we do have the need to convene an executive session immediately thereafter for the purposes of reviewing and discussing pending, probable, and imminent litigation and property acquisition. All that being said, I'm going to ask, please, for a motion.
So moved.
Thank you. And a second, I heard trustee Blair. Thank you very much. This is a motion then to adjourn the regular board meeting and then go into a study session. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. It is 7:58 PM. Thank you very much and have a good evening.